Hello, welcome back. I'm here with another prophetic word, and I've got my mug, my Emma mug. This is my daughter's name. This is her mug, but I use it. And it's late, so we're just having a cozy word here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining me again. The word, this word is a little bit time sensitive. So I want to get this one out soon because the vision that I had in meditation connected to this word in conjunction with like some Bible passages, and there was actually some flowers that came forward with all of this too in meditation, and on a walk home I really connected with a flower. And it's just a lot. It's a lot to process. So, don't take my view on it as the final view. But it's important stuff to be addressing and looking at right now at this moment in time. And reason being is that it has to do with rulership, kingship, queenship, monarchy, authority, self-authority, sovereignty. Basically, on a very deep level, our relationship with ourselves has fundamentally, for most people, been damaged from a very young age because of a lack of sovereignty, right? And I say that in a way that's been done in a healthy way, because there's a way of breaking free from authority structures that can be done in a way that's also unhealthy and violent. And what is really going on right now is a bigger awakening collectively that, like I said in other videos, is like cosmic in proportion. We are literally becoming galactic citizens. We are becoming one with parts of ourselves that are way out there in other parts of the quantum, like way evolved parts of ourselves, like evolved DNA. Some of this is your starseed origins, starseed home. And at the same time, you're awakening ancient like DNA from very, very ancient times on Earth that also is containing a lot of wisdom that wants to come online right now. And everything about you is just like, I just feel as I was just getting like stretched open to so many more infinite potentials. And it's really exciting and it's really good. But there's like a lot of chaos around this to do with like empire and, old things, imperialism, colonialism. And one of the biggest symbols of this, and one of the biggest remnants of these old structures by which our old world up until this point has operated, has to do with monarchy, right? And especially certain royal families that did a lot of like colonialism, like the British, like the Dutch, and some others as well. But certainly a lot of what was started, especially in England with the Industrial Revolution there, pretty much changed the whole world. And the reason why I'm giving all this like backstory, and there's a lot of karma that's been created in the world as a result of these the power and the imposition that was created by certain key players in the world, certain key power authorities that's affected so much other relationships and so many other choices and actions, like dominoes, right? And that has created a lot of karma drama stories in a certain direction, down certain paths, right? Down certain tangents. And a lot of those things have become very normalized. But what's going on right now is a huge awakening to kind of like rip people out of that. And it's going to be very interesting to see how things shift from this weekend coming up, because we've got the coronation on Saturday, I think it's the 6th, I think it's on the 6th. And what I saw in my vision was not because I knew it was coming up this weekend, but I just was like asking God what I really needed to know right now. And I see this like figure that looked kind of like a witch with a spear, like a lightning spear. And the spear was going down into this pond in front of her. And it looked like a swirling galaxy of stars in a pool. It seemed very witchy. It was like scary, a little, not really scary, but a little bit like seeming like, I don't know about this. Like maybe somebody's playing with things that at a very high level that are a little bit chaotic and dangerous. And then I see it move into like the scene of a perfect day with like white horses and carriages. And then I see King Charles, and I see Camilla, and I see Will, and I see Kate. And I like it, it was just, this almost like as picture perfect as like the day that Charles married Diana, and the whole world like went gaga over Princess Diana kind of feeling about the whole scene, and I'm really feeling Princess Di's energy right now, and I don't know why, but yeah, she's like, I'm really feeling that. My apologies. But after this, I see a tower moment. I see like a tower, like kind of getting hit by that lightning bolt, and something crumbling, right? Like something like getting ripped open. And it was kind of like disturbing. I was like, what's really going on, But I asked, like, well, is this a good thing? Like, is this like a positive breaking apart? And I got the sense that it wasn't. Like, my personal sense was that there is interference, that there's groups, right? There's a lot of groups that broke away from the monarchy, a lot of American kind of extremist groups, like people like the KKK even, who have a sort of vested interest in a very unhealthy destruction of monarchy, because there are spiritual reasons, there's underlying spiritual hierarchy reasons why these things are in place still, even in this day, that I'm understanding. Like, and there's a reason why the day the Queen of England died, why on that day, like, it was, something was very shifty and different in the whole matrix. Like, I remember I was out for a walk in the woods, and like the rainbows coming off of my camera were like crazy. And There was just the way the light was coming off of the sun. And I've never even shared these videos, but just the way it was pulsing, it was just like something was different. And everything was very vibrant and alive. And the veil was thinner on that day. And, some people were talked about it a little bit, but like it kind of faded away. But the reason why I bring it up is because I was asking, like, if this destruction was sort of because of this intervention by this witchery, by these dark groups that want this chaos. And that was the sense that I got, that it was. And that I was like, well, what is the goal? Like, what is the higher outcome that would be desired by the Lord for the monarchy in England, going forward as an institution that is, for all intents and purposes, completely out of alignment and outdated for New Earth. And what I saw was like the royal family, especially like Charles and Camilla's faces, like becoming very crystalline and rainbow. And it was like a dissolution of some people, maybe like David Icke would say like their reptilian self. I didn't see that. I didn't see anything reptilian. But I just saw a human self getting dissolved into a crystalline rainbow light body for all intents and purposes, like ascension. And I thought that was really beautiful because of all those rainbows that I saw, like everywhere in the environment on the day that the Queen of England died. And, yes, there's been a role that the British monarchy played in a lot of structure and authority that in some ways has oppressed a lot of people in the world and had a very specific outcome, which created more benefit for some and less benefit for others. But it just seems to me like, because of, like I said, it created a lot of karma, right, in a certain direction. And it just seemed like part of their karma and the resolution of their karma is to go through these processes of transformation themselves, which is probably one of the most potent things for mass ascension of a collective. Now, I'm not saying that this is necessarily going to happen as like a definitive prophetic word. What I'm saying it as is a timeline, is as a potential, as a highest potential, because a reason being that if we don't state a highest potential, it's far less likely to come into being. And often we don't put enough co-creation with God around what God would like to see, which is why we end up with a lot more chaotic, sometimes very like unfortunate situations that speak to some of the more apocalyptic, we could get into the word apocalyptic, but more negative, chaotic transitions and transformations into the next thing, instead of seeing things happen through more consciousness, love, and light evolutions and transitions and transformations. And really, apocalypse really actually is all about unveiling in general. It's just that often we have this tendency as humans, and a lot of this is because of our own trauma, unhealed trauma, to be very attracted towards the negative route of that unveiling instead of the more positive route. And that's partially because of programming, and it's because it's in our DNA, and it's because of how things usually happen, right? And if you look at the Bible, how many times do people learn because they went through a lot of pain and suffering, not listening to God and not co-creating with God and not listening to God and not being obedient to God. And then there's all sorts of pain and suffering and tower moments and chaos and lack. And then they pray to come back into God's favor. It's like, so, you know, like, it's a good time to start co-creating. It's a good time to start co-creating in more positive outcomes is what I'm going to say right now. And another thing about this is, like, Meghan and Harry are supposed to be a part of the royal family. You know, I'm not going to get too deep on pop culture drama stuff, but fundamentally, like I said, some of these groups that are really against the royal family in a negative way are very racist groups, and they know that that they don't want to see this positive transformation of the royal family by having a person who's got African American descent in the royal family, and how that could actually serve like a really positive, transformative role, and was, you know, always meant to. And there was actually a precursor to her. The very first person of an African descent in a royal family was within, I think it was also within the last 10 years, but it was in the Bath family, whose estate is Longley. And I know this because I worked on that estate for a project at one of my jobs, and there was a little show about those people, and they're not that famous, so it wasn't like such a big controversy, but that was sort of the beginning of this seeding within royals of this African lineage. And it's an important thing for these bigger transitions that God's trying to do for bringing forward new earth. And I think a lot of the chaos that we've seen, which has been so ridiculous, I think there's been a lot of influence by a lot of magic, by a lot of people trying to really destroy that family. And I'm not saying this as like some sort of massive defense for them. So please don't like get me wrong when I'm sharing all this, but to turn a family, like I said, that is still playing spiritually, like a spiritual architectural role in the world that is significant, to just turn that into to Hollywood, and to kind of the fact that, you know, Harry and Meghan sort of allowed that to happen through a lot of witchcraft. And we know Hollywood is heavy ridden with witchcraft. It's kind of like she should have known better, and it's kind of like they should have known better, but it happened. And again, partially because of their own trauma and their own wounds, because we're all people, and they clearly have a lot of their own ish. And but it's you know, it kind of needs fixing. So we're talking about all this to kind of put a new consciousness around healing and creating highest outcomes, because it actually affects a lot of people. It actually is in the highest good of all beings that we talk about the better outcome, which would be everybody coming together and everybody in the royal family taking a seriously hardcore role, like Princess Diana was trying to do before they killed her, to do outreach and to help people to come together, to evolve, to be more giving, to be way more philanthropic than they already are. I'm not saying that they're not, but just like at a really another level. And that's going to really help to change the world in important ways. And, you know, what they've been doing up till now isn't sufficient. And that's why, you know, negative interventions and negative magic is going to cause problems. And I've seen some potential outcomes that I don't want to speak on for King Charles that are very negative, and it's not a desired outcome. And and I'm just going to leave it at that because I don't want to speak certain negative things over anybody's life. So, just to talk a little bit deeper about why this is so important is because it affects future generations, and it affects the legacy of future generations and what our children and their children are inheriting. And if, like I said, it is an important piece of spiritual architecture. And if things go into the lowest possible timeline, and which is what these monstrous, racist, Yahoo kind of overly libertarian groups want, and they do this through a lot of magic and a lot of Masonic weird wacko stuff that certain people do, but it's very powerful, and they know a lot, and they can manipulate a lot, and they do manipulate a lot. And what will end up happening is a lot of poverty and chaos and destruction for a lot of people. And that's going to be something that our children have to pick up. And they're already being prepared for, and the children that are going to be born now are, into these more awakened families are going to be prepared to really serve in that capacity to a world that's experienced a lot of chaos and destruction. And I'm going to speak to, where I was getting these insights, but, we don't want our kids to have to pick up such a heavy amount of devastation, because the evolution timeline that was meant to happen to prevent so much devastation, like we've seen in past history, can be avoided. And I mean, the kind of, I was just, like I said, I stopped and I was talking to a flower on my way home. And by the way, I just want to say King Charles talks to plants, okay? He's not a terrible human being. He's actually, in some ways, a very in touch person. I was talking to this flower, and it was a rose, this like 5-petaled simple rose bush with this like rusty red color. And it was just called to me. And like, it's not like I'm always just, speaking to every plant, but as I was walking by, it just like really called to me. And so I stopped and I decided to connect and listen to what it wanted to share. And, it's always fun to connect with a flower essence, because all the flowers were just starting to come into bloom, and it was so beautiful. And it's just like, touching the petals and connecting. You have to connect with the flower before you can really understand the message and tap in, just like how you have to praise God and give God all the praise and all the glory before you really start speaking to God. It's the same thing in a different way. The flower's not asking for all the praise and all the glory. It's asking you to love it and be tender with it, and have that nurturing bond, because you're connecting to that feminine aspect of the divine instead of the masculine. So here I am connecting, and I see, and this was so unexpected to see from like a rose. Like, I see Mary Magdalene, first of all. So this was like a message that was very connected to her. And she often does come in when it comes to do with something about children, because she's a very big protector and defender of children and future generations. And I see houses. I see all these houses. And then I see like a tornado and like a storm coming through and just like obliterating all the houses, just literally tearing apart, like a storm tearing apart everything in its wake. And it was really quite disturbing just seeing everything get like blown apart. And then I saw my daughter, and she had like a little bit of like a cape over her head, kind of like you would expect, like Mary Magdalene herself. Like usually when you see her, she has a little cape over her head, partially covered head. And my daughter had this same sort of covering on her head. And I see her all bright, like illuminated, like shining all this light. And, you know, it was like the divine feminine, my daughter, had been fully released. And then I see her like kind of like ministering to like a group of people around her. Oh, I forgot one part. So before I saw her ministering to a group of people, I see this image of like poverty, like children in poverty. And like just this, a lot of poverty, a really impoverished energy. And I just then saw her like, you know, caring for all of these people and helping them come to the divine. And a lot of young people. And it felt very important in that moment to one, recognize partially why I've had so much challenges since she was getting close to being born. Like since basically my third trimester, I've been like heavily attacked by the enemy. And not to say I was not attacked in my life before, but it went way up, like way up from like a little bit before she was born and onwards. And I realized that part of it is because even more so than my life, the enemy has just been so against her life. Like, hence, this is why we have our Emma mug today. Yay, Emma. And even her birth, you know, I was like thinking about it, like her birth was, and you might be reflecting on some stuff for yourself in all this, but like there was this huge chaotic snafu. I couldn't get a room. Like I was like waiting in triage at the hospital forever. Couldn't get a room. I was like, it's so much pain. And then finally I get like the worst room in the hospital. And then, and I wouldn't do this now because, I just wouldn't again after my experience and no matter what, but I was, again, I felt like I was dying, just to be quite frank. And anyway, so I took the epidural, and then right after, like very, very soon after, like her heartbeat just like started to drop, and it was like, oh my God, like they're killing her with medicine. And then they ended up thinking they stabilized it for a little bit, but then they ended up rushing me into the emergency room. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And then at the same time, there was a real serious emergency in the next room with twins, preemie twins, where it was like life-threatening, and I'm hearing everything going on in there. And the doctors that were supposed to be tending to me were then all leaving to go tend to the really big emergency, the life or death emergency. And whoever was left basically just like gave me an emergency C-section. I really had very little say about it. And it was a very traumatic experience. Very traumatic. And in any case, she was healthy. She's fine. There was no problems. There was no, there was no damage that happened to her from the experience. And, but it was just like the very beginning of like the enemy attacking on her life. And, like really attacking. There was like, you know, some things before that were like, I'm not getting into it, but that was like the first really big attack. And like I've had issues with my ex and with custody, and like he made up a whole bunch of like lies about me to try and take her away from me. And like tomorrow I have to like go to a final court hearing about that. And, but it was like a principality, like an entity, a darkness working through him because he has left all faith and he's chosen to be an atheist, that really allowed these principalities to work through him to make like me a demon. And when she was a baby, like he would judge me all the time. He was always kind of acting as this agent for the devil to kind of like try and like remove me from her life. And it was just like, and it was just so apparent from the beginning, about like getting her away from me. And this court case was like the final big, I'm gonna do anything I can, even if I have to make up any lie to get her away from you. And it was just like, I've been stressed out, honestly, probably for about 9 years over my child and like in this war. And what's it all about? Because the enemy knows what she is here to do and ensure, and is to ensure that there is a legacy of love and divinity and Christ in the future for no matter what happens. And she's not the only one. There's many other like her, and I'm sure many parents, if this video reaches them, have could attest to similar experiences with their kids. And I'm not saying it's for everybody, but you'll know if you resonate with this message. And it's not a joke. None of this stuff is joke. I mean, some of the other passages, like so I didn't read the Bible yet, but like for starters, okay, we've got did I end up skipping over one of them? Well, that's interesting. I think I did. The Habakkuk's not written down. But I've got here Amos 9:11. 9:11. Weird. And it says, Israel's restoration. In that day, I will restore David's fallen shelter. I will repair its broken walls and restore its ruins and we will rebuild it as it used to be. So I thought that was pretty interesting that passage was given about repairing broken walls and restoring its ruins, when the vision I got when I was before on the walk, when I was out meditating with the rose, was seeing everything getting destroyed, right? Just destroyed. And so there is something big about a big shift of rebuilding that is meant to happen, that the enemy doesn't want to happen. He doesn't want the agents in the future to be here that will ensure that that candle is lit and that the rebuilding will happen, right? I mean, essentially, for all intents and purposes, the enemy wants to basically wipe out the future descendants of humanity and prevent the birthing of the remaining souls that are meant to be birthed from the Gulf, so that the fullness of the Messiah can return. And to really get deeper into that, I think you have to look at some of the teachings in Kabbalah. But like, there's souls that need to be born before the fullness of the second coming, and that's part of it too. And so the next passage is the two passages here are from Jeremiah, and it's Jeremiah 18:18 says, they said to come, let's make plans against Jeremiah, for the teaching of the law by the priest will not cease, nor will counsel from the wise. nor the word from the prophet. So come, let's attack him with our tongues and pay no attention to anything he says. So, sorry, I do have the Habakkuk. Okay, we're gonna get back to it. But yeah, there's this force of like wanting to make it hard for people to hear the truth, I think right now and in the future, about the concerns about the level of destruction possible and what's really going to be required. People don't really want to look at it, talk about it. And there's a lot of people who I know, me personally, speak against me or have spoken against me in the past. And we're going to make a separate video about these kinds of things and bring healing and closure to people who've spoken against you. But it's something that we continually have to pray about and bring attention to the importance of truth and overcoming other people's falseness and instilling that very much in all of our teachings and in our children, so that when they are dealing with things in the future, they have the strength to deal with it. And it's important to, God was saying in the summary to a lot of stuff about, like, it's important to not stand back. It's important to not yield. And he said, do not take shelter in the midst of the storm. And that's a message for you now. And it's a message of what you need to teach your children as well. And it says, because the new earth is upon us, or the new Israel, however you want to put it. And it says, the wicked schemes will fall like dust and rubble. They will, and here, this is also interesting, because it says the wicked schemes will fall like dust and rubble. They will come to ruin. They will come to nothing. Take a stand for what is right. Take a stand for the Lord, what is true, lasting, and moral. So, which includes taking a stand for heaven's incarnation amongst the people of Zion, family values, kingly leadership, glory to glory, all of it. And it says here, and it also says, the flowers will fall. They will fall into darkness, into ruin, if you do not tend to them, nurture them, and make them bright. And it says, the wicked cannot stop you. They cannot take away your inheritance. They cannot inflict you with disease, disturbance, or any other impoverished circumstance. And a lot of people are mad about it, right? It says, and their wrath is at a tantamount high, because they could not make you fall. They could not disease your lips, your sword, or your tongue. So, that's part of why there's some people that are all, retaliating, against you. But isn't that amazing? Like, that I saw my daughter coming out with all this light amongst that rubble, and looking at it from the perspective of that, in a way that, no matter how much effort they put or whatever, it's not going to come to anything. The chaos is not going to come to anything because of the legacy that we're creating through the work we're doing now and through what we're instilling in our children for the future generations. So that's why it's very important to be planting the seeds now of affirming that, yes, our new earth is here now. Yes, it is manifesting now. And yes, that our children will be leaders of the new earth. And this is absolutely, unequivocally happening. And, there's nothing to really be worthy holding back on at this point about that. So, the Habakkuk is amazing. It's amazing how it relates to the vision about the lightning. Because Habakkuk 3 verse 11 says, sun and moon stood still in the heavens at the glint of your flying arrows, at the lightning of your flashing spear. So I was like really taken aback about how the visual that I saw in the meditation came together with the word. And I have in the notes here, God's triumph over his enemies would be just as complete as on that occasion. And it says here, 3:12, in wrath you strode through the earth, and in anger you threshed the nations. 3:13 says, you came out to deliver your people, to save your anointed one. You crushed the leader of the land of wickedness. You stripped him from head to foot. And then it says here, 3:14, with his own spear, you pierced his head when his warriors stormed out to scatter us who were in hiding. And it says, God will likewise vanquish present foes. So I found this fascinating because I was like, after I read this, I was like, was my interpretation about the whole vision I saw wrong? Did I get it all wrong? Because again, our interpretations sometimes, are just our interpretations. And sometimes the visuals that God sends and the word of God from the Bible God sends is very revealing of truth. And I'm like, did I get it wrong? Like is Charles the sorcerer here? And did he take the spear and kind of and the magic of the control that's been created through magic and throw it back at him? Is that what's going on here? Because these are powerful words, in wrath you strode through the earth, and in anger you threshed the nations. You crushed the leader of the land of wickedness. With his own spear you pierced his head when his warriors stormed out to scatter us, gloating as though about to devour the wretched who were in hiding. And it's strange because I saw them, coming out with the horses, and I don't know. It's it's intense. It's intense. And the sun and moon stood still in the heavens at the glint of your flying arrows, at the lightning of your flashing spear. God is doing big moves at this hour. Big moves, right? Why? Because he wants to restore the ruins of his temple. And that means he wants to bring people back to spirituality. He wants to bring people back to a much more direct and powerful relationship with God. So what's God going to do? God's going to destroy, ultimately, anything that's stopping that, right? And this is kind of, just to pull it all together, like I said, if there are certain changes don't happen, if monarchy doesn't evolve, if the royal family does not evolve, and like I said, take on this higher timeline kind of role that I saw, because God always wants the more merciful outcome, right? We have a merciful God. But if I'm being honest here, God will allow what other people, often God allows other people to act as agents of darkness through their magic or whatever, to throw those spears if people are not obedient to God, if people are not in alignment, right? If people aren't doing the role that God is asking of them in this hour, he will allow that. He will allow that his spear that he's throwing to be thrown through an earth agent, right? Which people will say is the enemy and an agent of darkness, and they are, but it's all tied into God's wrath, right? So that's kind of, how I've kind of put the whole thing together from my perspective. I'd love to hear your own perspective. You can put it in the comments. Um, just to kind of close the conversation about why this is all so serious, is because the amount of poverty that could be unleashed if the failure to come to the Lord occurs is going to be very intense. Like I said, I saw a vision of children when I was by the Rose that were in abject poverty. And then, I'm not really that adept at Bible to know what Bible passages to look for. So I just, when I, come back and I pray and I praise the Lord and then I ask, what Bible I need to know, I just hear the name, the what chapter, the verse, and then I go find it and I see what it's about. That's what I do. And so what I got for this Jeremiah 19 verses 8 and 9, it says here, I will devastate the city and make it an object of horror and scorn. And all who pass by will be appalled and will scoff because of all its wounds. That's disturbing considering the obliteration that I saw in the vision by the Rose. And for verse 9, it says, I will make them eat the flesh of their sons and daughters, and they will eat one another's flesh, because their enemies will press the siege so hard against them to destroy them. And, what was I just saying about, it's actually the Lord that's causing the enemies to press the siege so hard to cause this destruction and this deep poverty that would cause people to do horrific, inhuman things that we don't even want to be talking about, but we are, because it's a message from God. So this kind of retrogression and devastation is why God is saying specifically in the closing message, do not yield, do not stand back. And on my screen, on my Google screen right now, is a light bulb all lit up. You could see all the wires, right? And I said in another one of my videos recently, we need to innovate. We need new ideas. We need genius. Just like we need Niels Bohr's and Einstein's and all kinds of Pascal's, and we need ancient divine feminine wisdom that's been buried and lost. We need all of it. We gotta wake up world, guys and gals. So I do think that there is positive in here, because God did say that as long as we keep going and are obedient to the Lord here and keep taking a stand, it says they cannot take away your inheritance. They cannot inflict you with this disease, disturbance, or any other impoverished circumstance. And they're mad about it. They're mad about it. So you have to keep protecting yourself. You have to keep praying in the Holy Spirit every day, and keep going. And every sword that they throw at you in this consciousness, right, is just going to get thrown back at them, because you're doing the work of the Lord and you're speaking the truth that needs to be spoken. So that's this word, and I'm sending you lots of love. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and please give it a like and comment below. And I'll be back very soon with more prophetic words and chats and conversations, and speaking as well about topics of healing that go well with these conversations of our leadership and ascension and transition into the new. Take care.